Forrest Griffin, while he was still active in the UFC, was never known as the most technical fighter or the most skilled fighter. He wasn't known for his speed or power either. Rather, he was known for his incredible heart, resilience, will, and his outstanding conditioning. In EA Sports UFC though, he is the complete opposite of what he is in real life. In a video game where having a fighter with good endurance is extremely important, Forrest Griffin was not designed correctly at all. With a stamina rating of 65 and an endurance rating of 64, he is absolutely useless in 5-round fights, and against certain fighters in the hands of certain players, you have no chance of winning with Forrest Griffin. The one thing these developers should have gotten right when it comes to Forrest Griffin is his tenacity and endurance, and frankly, they failed completely, and this is why he is number 10 on my list. Apart from TJ Dillashaw, who wasn't in the game when it was released, Anthony Johnson was the #1 most requested fighter in EA Sports UFC. He was the guy that a lot of people were looking forward to being added in the game, and when he was finally added in the game, it was a complete disappointment. Anthony Johnson in real life is known for his speed, explosiveness, and power. Now when it comes to power in EA Sports UFC, they got it right. He has a lot of power in the game, but when it comes to his speed and explosiveness, they completely missed the mark. With sluggish strikes that takes forever to load up and land, Anthony Johnson in EA Sports UFC just does not live up to his name. You can't be aggressive with them, you can't be explosive with them, you can't use his speed, and because he has no range, catching up to people is so much more difficult than it needs to be. And this is why a lot of people avoid picking him online, and also why he comes in at number 9 on my list. Hector Lombard in EA Sports UFC is pretty much a midget. When Hector Lombard was released, it became clear at that very moment that whoever was in charge of creating these characters simply does not play the game online, because if he did, he wouldn't make this atrocious mistake. Everything about Hector Lombard is just wrong. I mean, look at those tiny midget legs supporting that gigantic body. This guy is 5'9", the same height as Johnny Hendricks and Matt Hughes, but when you see him in the game, he looks like he's 5'3". That, and the fact that just like Anthony Johnson, Hector Lombard is a very explosive and fast fighter in real life. He is a fighter that can cover massive distance and get on the inside pretty quickly, but in the game, he is sluggish, he is slow, he has no range, and you can't catch up to anyone. The developers definitely dropped the ball on this one. They totally missed the mark, and with that, he comes in at number 8 on this list. You know, when it was announced that Brock Lesnar was going to be added to EA Sports UFC, I was very happy. I really was. But that was until I saw his character. I mean, look at this. Look at the proportions on this thing. Extremely tiny legs supporting an incredibly gigantic body. I mean, how didn't anyone catch this? No one saw this and said, wait a second, that character model doesn't look right. Why does he have skinny legs again? Why aren't the proportions correct? I mean, what's going on? Now that alone makes me not want to use Brock Lesnar, because frankly, I don't want to keep looking at that model. But that's not the only thing that's wrong with Brock Lesnar. It's true that when he was in the UFC, he wasn't the best heavyweight out there. But the guy was fast. He was well known for his incredible speed, the type of speed that you wouldn't expect from a guy that big. And that speed just does not translate in EA Sports UFC. So you have a character model that looks like Johnny Bravo, and a fighter that moves nothing like Brock Lesnar. I mean, they completely messed up this one in my opinion, and that's why he comes in at number 7 on my list. Honestly, this one really makes me sad. It really makes me sad because Rashad Evans in EA Sports UFC does not even come close to being as good as Rashad Evans really is. Rashad is known for his hand speed, his explosiveness, his ability to cover distance, his power, his boxing, his wrestling, his conditioning. And none of that really translates correctly in the game at all. I can't, if my life depended on it, understand why his stamina and endurance is so bad in this game. He doesn't have the best conditioning in the world, that's a fact, but he definitely deserves more than a 60 for his endurance and a 61 for his stamina. I mean, what am I going to do with a 60 endurance rating against fighters like John Jones, Gustafsson, and Anderson Silva? It's almost like they have no idea who Rashad is and what he has done, and when you look at his character model, with those tiny legs looking like a midget, it becomes pretty clear how badly they messed him up. They missed the mark with this one completely, and he definitely deserves to come in at number 6 on my list. Mark Coleman in EA Sports UFC makes me go, why even bother? I mean, do you guys want this fighter to be used online at all? Because I guarantee no one's picking Mark Coleman, because he completely sucks in this game. I feel like if they're gonna add legends to the game, at least give us the legend while he was in his prime, when he was the absolute best version of himself. That's what they did with Chuck Liddell and Royce Gracie in the game, but then when it came to Mark Coleman, we got the old, out of his prime version of the fighter. And why does it say 34 on his profile when the character model is clearly not the 34-year-old Mark Coleman? This one is just mind-boggling to me because I expected more. I expected the young, big, and jacked up version of Coleman, you know, the godfather of ground and pound. Instead, we got an old man that is completely useless when competing with the likes of Kane and Junior Dos Santos. Definitely number 5 on my list because they messed this one up pretty bad. In a division dominated by fighters like GSP, Gilbert Melendez, Nate Diaz, etc., Josh Koscheck simply sucks. I guess it's not totally unrealistic because the guy can't seem to win a fight right now, you know, because the competition has gotten tougher and he just didn't evolve with them. But when I use Josh Koscheck, I just don't see how he can compete with the rest. He comes in at number 4 on this list because I feel like the developers could have improved certain aspects of his game. For one, his conditioning is just bad for the welterweight division. And I say it's bad because his conditioning is actually very good in real life. His wrestling in the game is also not on par with his actual wrestling ability in real life. And Josh Koscheck has always been a powerful and explosive guy, but in the game he is slow, sluggish, and gets tired way too quickly. If you have Josh Koscheck against a good player using a good character, you're automatically at a massive disadvantage, and that's why he is number 4 on this list. They completely messed this one up as well. Gray Maynard, the EA Sports UFC horrible fighter in a division full of killers. I mean, let's look at the fighters you'd be going up against if you choose to pick Gray Maynard. You got Anthony Pettis, Gilbert Melendez, Rafael Dos Anjos, Benson Henderson, Conor McGregor. I mean, so many fighters that are so much better than him in his game that it's just a waste of time actually picking him. Literally, the developers wasted their time making Gray Maynard because they made him in a way that he just cannot compete with the rest. He is incredibly slow and sluggish, he barely has any range, his strikes barely have any power, his takedowns are not that good, and he has no chin. So picking Gray Maynard is just not something players do very often. He comes in at number 3 on this list because of the division he finds himself in. Not only will you be going up against other much more superior lightweights, you'll be fighting welterweights like GSP, Robbie Lawler, Matt Brown, and these guys are so much bigger and so much better than Gray Maynard. It's just really sad, man, because I mean, when you actually think about it, it's really not that unrealistic, because in real life he is really not doing that well. So, you know, there you go. Gray Maynard comes in at number 3, and it's definitely deserved because he sucks in this game. Now, just like I said when I was talking about Mark Coleman, I'm gonna say it again. Why bother? If you're gonna make a fighter this horrible and atrocious in a division full of monsters, why bother? Why? Pascal Krauss is a fighter in EA Sports UFC that absolutely no one picks. As I'm making this video right now, I'm thinking to myself, what is it about Pascal Krauss that you can say, okay, he is really good at that and I could probably win fights with him, and I came up with nothing. I came up with absolutely nothing. There is absolutely nothing that's good about Pascal Krauss. His endurance at 69 is horrible, the absolute worst in the whole division. His takedown rating of 65 is also horrible, the worst in the division. His submission defense is also the worst in the division. He's not fast, he's not powerful, and for a guy who is 6'1", he doesn't even have the range you would expect him to have. There is no reason or incentive at all to pick Pascal Krauss in a division full of killers, and that is why this guy comes in at number 2 on this list. My goodness, what a waste of space. And here we are, my number 1 worst fighter in EA Sports UFC. With Mark Hunt, it all comes together. Every single thing that makes a fighter unusable in EA Sports UFC is embodied in one fighter. You want a fighter that is extremely slow? Mark Hunt. Do you want a fighter with horrible endurance? Mark Hunt. Do you want a short fighter with no range whatsoever? Mark Hunt. Do you want a fighter that has 0 wrestling and 0 jiu-jitsu? Mark Hunt. You want a horrible fighter in a division where most people pick very dominant fighters? Mark Hunt. You want to know what it feels like to walk in mud with 100-pound ankle weights strapped to your ankles? Mark Hunt. Pretty much. Do you want to lose a lot of fights in a very short period of time? Then pick Mark Hunt and you will not be disappointed. You know, I understand that Mark Hunt is not the best heavyweight in the world, but do you really think he is that slow and sluggish in real life? I can give you guys a pass when it comes to his endurance because, I mean, let's be honest, the guy does get really tired in fights, but the guy is also very explosive. He is fast, he can cover a massive amount of distance in a very short period of time, so why doesn't that translate to the game? I just don't understand why they would spend so much time making these characters and then make them so horrible that no one wants to pick them. They should have made him explosive, given him strikes with some range to them, give him the speed, the agility, but instead, they made him completely unusable against good players using good fighters. Mark Hunt just cannot compete with the likes of JDS, Verdum, and Kane, and because of this, he comes in at number 1 on my list of EA Sports UFC worst fighters. Honestly, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone at all. It really shouldn't.